The rain had not ceased for 6 days, and Dragonstow's black parapets wept with every squall that scoured the narrow sea. Yet Robert Baratheon pressed on through the drenched courtyard, his crimson cloak sodden and heavy, his great warhammer lashed across his broad back. He was king of the 7 kingdoms now, crowned upon a throne still warm with Targaryen blood. And if Dragonstone wished to greet him with a tempest, it would learn soon enough that storms were the birthright of Storm's End. Lightning cracked across the sky, stark and silver, illuminating the basalt keep in a brief glare that carved every gargoyle and wyvern in frost-blue lines. The island fortress had surrendered without fight, its last defenders broken months before upon the Trident, but Dragonstone stones remembered the dragons that had perched here for 3 centuries. Robert felt that memory humming like an old song beneath his boots, mingling with the scent of wet ash and salt. He had come for Viserys and Daenerys, the last heirs of the line he had slain, yet they had slipped away across the narrow waters in the night, spirited off by loyalists who still whispered of dragon fire and vengeance. What remained was merely iron and stone, and the hoarded wealth of a fallen house. Or so the king believed, until the master Gotkarms led him to the barren rookery. There, amid shattered nests and sheared chains, lay a single egg the color of midnight coals, fissured by veins of bronze that glimmered when the torches shuddered in the wind. Robert peered at it, frowning. "Another bauble," he muttered in his booming baritone, fed up with Targaryen curios. But his hand strayed toward the shell regardless, guided by something older than hatred, the rough curiosity of a boy who once dreamed of heroes and wonders. Beneath the egg's hard surface heat pulsed, the warmth of a living forge. He felt it thrumming through his calloused palm, and for a moment, the hall fell away. The bloody banners, the ghosts, the clamor of soldiers outside. All that remained was the heartbeat, a measured, patient drumming. "My king," Maester Ronald ventured, water dripping from the raven-feathered shoulders of his robe, "dragon eggs have been dead for a century." The pyromancers spent half their treasury trying to quicken them. Only ashes remain. Robert's dark eyes lingered on the fissures. "Ashes can still take flame, Maester. See that it's packed in straw and oilcloth. We'll keep it warm." Ronald hesitated, eyes glittering behind spectacles. "Sire, it is folly to—" Robert rounded on him with that fierce smile that had rallied 1,000 men on the Redgrass field. "Folly? I rode into battle behind a banner that carried only a stag. If I had a dragon on my side, I would have crossed the Trident without wetting my boots." Thunder boomed overhead, punctuating the boast. So the egg traveled with a royal retinue, nested in a cedar crate lined with sheepskins, borne south toward King's Landing, while gales battered the Blackwater Bay. At Summerhall they paused, for Robert wished to see the ruins where Arya's father had tried to birth dragons in wildfire and tragedy. The twisted arches stood scorched and silent, wreathed in vines. Robert strode through them at dusk, the egg cradled in his own great hands, feeling the stones shudder beneath some memory of conflagration. He ordered a brazier built of oak and iron, stoked until the coals glowed white. For 7 nights he kept vigil beside it, drinking deep of Dornish red, singing bawdy Stormlander ballads that cracked the silent hush of that doomed place. Lords muttered that their king had surrendered to superstition, but none dared drag him away. On the 8th dawn the shell broke. It was not a shattering but a slow unfurling, bronze seams widening like sunrise across black horizons. A hiss of steam, a gasp of heat. Robert flinched from the furnace flare, yet his huge hands remained steady as the hatchling clawed free. A serpent no larger than a cat, its wings slick with birth fluid, its eyes 2 drops of molten gold. It clambered onto the king's gauntleted wrist and hissed, tiny fangs bared, steam curling from its nostrils. Robert stared, thunderstruck. The creature smelled of smoke and salt and the promise of war. "There you are, little fury," he murmured, voice caught somewhere between awe and triumph. Robert's prize. Robert's roar. The hatchling hissed again, puffing a thread of sparks. Maester Ronald, trembling, whispered the word that tore through the gathered lords like a spear. Drogon. It was a name scrawled in Eris's old ledgers. the largest of the 3 eggs gifted to Daenerys by Illyrio Mopatis. Drogon, after the cow who bent no knee. No, Robert said, voice steady as granite. Dragon? Aye. But this one bears a new name. The houses of the realm shall see it emblazoned on banners when I ride. Blackfire? No. That reeks of old treasons. He smiled slowly. Stormfire, perhaps. Let the maesters write that in their ledgers. Robert Baratheon, the first to tame the Stormfire. They rode on. Summer gave way to swelling heat. At Bitterbridge, the dragonlet learned to snap vermin from the tall grass. At Highgarden, it discovered songbirds, spitting out feathers in disdain. Robert fed it cuts of roasted boar from his own table, laughing when it scorched the meat to cinders before swallowing. Small folk gathered at every crossroads, mouths agape when the black stag rode past with flickering wings perched upon his pauldrons. Word flew faster than any raven. The king had a dragon. Weeks later, in the echoing expanse of the Red Keep's yard, Stormfire spread its wings to the early dawn. It had trebled in length. Scales deepened to a charred obsidian. When it unleashed its first full blaze, the dawn sky flushed red, and the gold cloaks scattered like mice. Robert roared laughter loud enough to rattle the towers. But behind the merriment, there glimmered something keener. The algorithm of conquest. He had won his crown smashing Targaryens into the mud. Now he would secure it with a weapon their own blood once wielded. Yet it was not the Iron Throne that kept him pacing through torchlit halls each night. It was prophecy, whispered to him, one rain-lashed evening by Thoros of Myr, in fumes of burning resin. A red priest's dream of a king who would carry dragon flames south to purge rot and treachery from the marrow of Westeros. Thoros saw banners aflame, saw shadowy serpents coiling round a stag crowned in lightning. Robert had laughed off half the priest's ravings, but this image gnawed at him. A storm-born dynasty wreathed not in gold, but in living fire. Cersei's smile grew brittle when Stormfire's wings eclipsed her balcony garden. She pressed their son, golden-haired like his siblings, to her breast as though the dragon might swoop down and snatch the boy. Robert took little notice. He drank with Renly until dawn, sparred bare-chested with Sir Jaime under a sun that scorched the marble tiles, and paraded his scaly ward through the throne room before the court. The lords knelt. Their eyes told the tale of every rebellion snuffed out before it began. Varys observed. Fingertips pressed together, silent and gleaming. Littlefinger inclined his head, calculating how this living weapon might tilt the tilt of debts. Yet all dragons grow, and Stormfire's hunger soon outpaced the royal kitchens. Cattle droves came up the Roserad, coins stamped with the stag traded for meat and marrow. Flea Bottom swelled with rumors of a king who would torch Old Town, sack Sunspear, break Dorne's stubborn spine beneath dark wings. In the stepstones, corsairs whispered fearfully of a black sail trimmed in crimson. A barge built to bear a dragon, its hull scorched from prow to stern. Ned Stark's arrival set the small council buzzing. Winterfell's lord had not walked south since the Trident. He rode through the Dragon Gate beneath clouds bruised violet, cloak of icewolf fur stirring in the wind. Outside the stables he dismounted, gaze caught by Stormfire coiled on a perch 20 feet high. The beast's golden eyes narrowed, pupils slitting like knives. Ned felt a chill colder than any winter gust, though the day was thick with summer sweat. Robert found him there, staring upward. "Old friend," he bellowed, clapping Ned's shoulder. "Behold my shadow of death. She grows cleverer by the day." "Shay." Ned kept his gaze on scales that rippled with every breath. "Ay, my queen in black armor." Robert's grin softened. "Shall march beside us when we ride." "Ride where?" Robert's eyes gleamed. "South. I've let the vipers coil long enough. Dorne schemes, the Reach fattens like a tick, and new sellswards sail into Blackwater Bay each fortnight, but with Stormfire at my side, no host can stand. We will remind them who forged this realm in fire and fury. Only this time, The blood will be Baratheon. Ned turned at last, jaw clenched. You would raise whole cities to keep a shaky peace? This is not the rebellion, Robert. The king's expression hardened, drink-flushed cheekbones sharpening. Peace. What peace, Ned? Every raven brings whispers of plots. Tell me you have not sensed it in Winterfell. The realm trembles like a bowstring drawn to breaking. I will end that tremble with one roar. And now way. Stormfire chose that moment to spread her wings, leather creaking like new sails. She leapt from the perch with a thunderous beat, talons gouging stone. Down she swooped, a living shadow across the yard, circling Ned and Robert once, twice, before gliding upward in an effortless climb that left banners snapping in her wake. She banked, turned her snout to the southeast, and unleashed a plume of flame so bright it painted the morning white. Ned stared after her, lips parted. And when she grows to 10 times this size, when her fire can melt gates of steel and burn harvests to husks, will you still command her, Robert? Or will she command you? Robert said nothing. The wind tugged his cloak, but his feet were set as if in stone. In the whirring vaults of the Tower of the Hand, Stormfire roosted each night upon a dais of black marble. Her coils sprawling across braziers kept aflame by servants who hardly dared blink. The glare of her eyes gilded every scroll Ned pored over. Letters from Dorne, ravens from the Eyrie, missives from Hoster Tully pleading for calm. But it was the unsigned parchment that chilled Stark's bones. A single line penned in a nervous, ink-splattered hand. The South rebels in silence, and fire will make rebels of the North. No sigil, no seal. Yet the truth of it flared like wildfire. When dawn stole in, Ned went to Robert Solar, found him asleep in a chair, a goblet still clutched in his hand. Cersei had refused him entry to her chambers. Small wonder, for the queen had taken the children to Maegor's holdfast, walls thick as a castle. Robert's snores shook dust from the rafters. Ned set down the scrolls, weary. The king stirred, brow creasing. What now? More sermons? I would speak sense, Ned said quietly. You see fear where there is merely life, Robert. The realm has time yet to mend. Give Stormfire to the maesters at the Citadel. Let them study her under guard. Do not wield her as a cudgel. And now. Robert pushed himself upright, eyes bloodshot, but bright. When you fought beside me at the Trident, you did not balk at bloody work. Why cower now? Because I have seen children burnt in siege fires, Ned whispered. Because your dragon-starved foes in the south are children of those who knelt to Aegon's flame. They will rise, Robert, all of them, if you scorch their fields. For a long moment, Robert's gaze slid away, drifting to the shuttered window where first light spilled like pale wine across the floorboards. You think I want war, he said hoarsely. I want the end of war, Ned. If they fear Stormfire, they will never dare draw blades. Fear begets daggers in the dark, Ned warned. Robert's shoulders slumped. Then what? I send her away, cripple the only miracle this cursed dynasty has known since Maegor. The lords love me for my victories, Ned, not for my crown. Without fresh victories, they will remember that I am only the hammer that shattered dragons, not the dragon reborn. Ned laid a hand on his friend's arm, feeling the tremor in those heavy muscles. You are Robert Baratheon, first of your name. Let that be enough. Robert's laughter was raw. Enough for you, perhaps. You never wanted crowns or glory. But the lioness at my side measures me against ghosts. Aegon, Maegor, Beeler the Blessed. The people chant their names even in death. What songs will they sing of Robert? The drunkard king? The stag who lost his antlers? A chill passed between them. Ned withdrew, realizing how far apart the Trident had set their paths. He bowed his head and left Robert to his ghosts and his dragon. Across the city, the small folk scented change. Bakers rose before dawn to knead bread by dragonlight, gleaming against the morning mist. Sailors swore the tides shifted with every beat of Stormfire's wings. Prostitutes in Chataia stews embroidered black scales on crimson silks. Swearing men would pay thrice to lie with a queen of storms. Gold cloaks boasted of the day they would march behind a dragon banner. In Flea Bottom's tangle of alleys, beggars whispered that Targaryen fires had returned, this time stirring within the belly of a stag. At night, the Red Keep's towers gleamed with hidden torches. Hammered copper banners depicting a golden-crowned stag, entwined by a rearing dragon, were hauled from the armories. Master smiths of the Guild of Metalsmiths forged thousands of brooches in that same sigil, one for every soldier in the royal host. The city rang with the clang of anvils, the hiss of quenching steel. Queen Cersei watched the preparations with narrowing eyes. In her solar, she traced the sigil's lines on parchment, each stroke a wound. Stormfire's wings cast shadows upon her sun-soaked balcony, blotting out the roses Jaime had planted. She felt the realm slipping from her slender grasp. A dragonless era had suited her ambition, for men might be swayed by gold and beauty, but dragons bowed only to strength. And strength, she feared, was Robert's alone. She summoned Pycelle, who shuffled in bearing letters from Casterly Rock, Lord Father's advice dripping honey and venom by turns. She summoned Varys, who emerged from one secret passage with whispers of Dornish riders massing near the Boneway. She summoned Jaime, whose golden armor gleamed like sunset steel. But none could offer the weapon Cersei craved, a blade sharp enough to sever Stormfire's neck before the kingdom's balance tipped forever. One night she stood before the dragon's perch, lit by the molten glow of braziers. Stormfire slept, chest rising slow, each exhale a curl of smoke. Cersei wore a gown of dark velvet, her honeyed hair bound in a single braid. In her hand she clutched a stopper-tipped vial, Pycelle's rarest poison, he had called it. The tears of an ashworm, capable of eking death from any warm-blooded creature. A single drop on raw meat, and the beast would cease its heartbeats within breaths. She approached, footsteps muffled on the carpets Ned Stark had ordered, laid to soften claw scrapes. Stormfire stirred, nostrils flaring. Cersei froze. The dragon's golden eyes opened, broad as shield bosses. Smoke snaked from her mouth. The queen felt heat prickling her face. She had learned once to face fear behind the mask of Lannister pride. But here, in the crucible of those inhuman eyes, her lineage felt like brittle straw. "Hello, monster," she whispered. The vial trembled in her grip. A low rumble drifted from Stormfire's throat, neither threat nor greeting, merely awareness. Wings shifted. Chains rattled. The dragon's gaze tracked the vial, pupils narrowing. Cersei thought of Tommen's soft laughter, of Joffrey's cruel smirk, of Myrcella's timid smile. She thought of dragons burning children in old Valyria. Her breath hitched. She drew the vial to her lips, uncorking it with quick teeth. The stench of copper filled her nose. She reached for a slab of mutton left half-eaten near the perch, hand trembling. Footsteps echoed behind her. "Leave it," Robert's voice growled. She spun, heart clenching. He loomed, beard a shadow in the torch glow. His eyes flicked from the meat to the vial, and fury seared in their depths. "I sought only to feed her," Cersei lied, voice husky. Robert strode forward. Stormfire hissed at his approach, but settled when his hand brushed her scaled jowl. He plucked the vial from Cersei's fingers, sniffed, then hurled it against the wall. Glass burst into 1,000 glinting shards. "Poison," he spat. "My own queen would murder my dream." "A nightmare, Robert," Cersei shot back, summoning courage from her bloodline. "A dragon cannot be tamed. You think it will win you submission, but it will devour all. It will devour us." Robert's face reddened like forge iron. "It is my blood bond now. I saved it from ashes. It answers to me. Until it doesn't." Her voice cracked like brittle glass. "And when it turns, you will burn, along with our children." "Your father butchered a child to end a rebellion," Robert growled. "Do not lecture me on mercy. If this beast secures our line, it is worth any cost." Stormfire's rumble grew. Sensing tension, the queen backed away, skirts brushing shards. Robert advanced one step, then another, until she felt stone against her spine. "You will not touch her again," he said, voice low. Swear it on your sons' lives." Tears gathered, seething. "I swear," she whispered, but the oath froze on her lips like frost on steel. In that instant, she nurtured a new fire, colder and deadlier than any flame a dragon might breathe. The resolve to make Robert's conquest his undoing. News travels as fast as galleys and bribes allow. And so it reached Sunspear that King Robert held a dragon fully a man's height tall. Prince Doran listened from his garden in the water gardens, children playing among pools at his feet. He closed his eyes as the sea breeze teased orange blossoms. A dragon at the head of a Baratheon host could carve Dorne to sunder once more, like the dragons of old. He summoned his youngest daughter, Arianne, and gave her a letter sealed in ochre wax, instructing her to carry it to High Hermitage under moonless dark. "Obara will know what to do," he said, and his face was a mask of cedarwood, hiding both dread and hope. In Old Town, the archmaesters convened by candle-lit smoke. Scrolls crackled open, records of Valyrian glass candles flickering to life when dragons flew. Archmaester Peristan sketched Stormfire's fledgling outline beside his calculations of fire-gifted bloodlines. Some argued for supplication to the Iron Throne, offering maester study in return for knowledge. Others whispered of assassins and crossbows, and the doom of Summerhall. The conclave ended with quills snapping in fury and a pledge to watch the skies. In Braavos, the iron-bellied Titan's shadow stretched across the lagoon, as traders spoke of a dragon sleeping in King's Landing. The Sea Lord dispatched envoys to Myre and Lys, for he remembered well the conflagration of Cahor, when last a sellsword company demanded tribute from a city with dragonfire behind its banners. Ships set sail, their holds laden with bolts of Myrish lace and darker instruments, repeating scorpions, alchemical bolts, whispers of dragonglass. Back in the Red Keep, Robert stood before the Iron Throne, resplendent in steel chased with gold. The vast chamber echoed with the clamor of lords assembled for war council. Stormfire roosted on the ledge above the throne, claws raking grooves in black stone, tail curling like a whip. Lords Caron and Estermont pledged men in galleys. Redwine promised wine for the march. Hightower offered maester healers, but withheld troops cautious of their neighbors in the Reach. Renly proposed a grand tourney to celebrate Stormfire, to swell coffers and hearts alike. In the back Varys listened, his smile as weightless as silken thread. Robert spread a map upon the barbed steps, the stormlands bathed in orange wax light, Dorne scorched amber. His finger traced the boneway. "Here we march," he declared, hammer tips striking the inked pass. "Stormfire's shadow will fall where Mors Martell once bowed to dragonlords. Let the sons of the sand see a new master of flame." Cheers erupted, though not unanimously. Lord Hoster coughed, eyes wary. Lord Arryn's seat remained empty, and Jon Arryn's absence weighed heavier than steel mail. The hand had retreated to the Eyrie, nursing illness, or so the letters claimed. Robert had thought him ailing from age. Now he suspected dissent. When council ended, Ned found him at dusk, a flagon of darkling ale in his fist. Amber light played upon Robert's face, etching lines of fatigue. Ned opened his mouth to speak, but Robert forestalled him. "I know, old friend. I ride too far too fast. Yet if I tarry, the wheels will turn without me. 7 kings will rise from this land of schemers, and none will bear the name Baratheon." Ned exhaled. "I will march with you then, if only to see the cost with my own eyes." Robert clasped his shoulder, relief palpable. "We leave in a fortnight. Tell your bannermen to muster at Storm's End." And so, Stormfire overhead spread her wings, casting a black breastplate of shadow across the map on the throne steps. The night air tasted of iron and promise. Soldiers came. From Crow's Nest and Harvest Hall, from Greenstone and Night Song, banners unfurled. Crowned stag, lightning bolt, boar in silver, seahorse in green. Smiths worked day and night, forging the new Dragonstag insignia. Robert inspected ranks. Stormfire perched upon a wheeled oak platform hauled by 6 oxen. She shrieked when the war horns sounded, delight sharpening her claws. Children of King's Landing lined the streets, mouths agape. Cersei stood upon the outer battlements, flanked by Joffrey in gilded mail 5 sizes too large. The boy's eyes glittered with violent awe as the dragon roared. Cersei's hands clenched white around the stone merlon. Sir Jaime, gold cloak billowing, rode beside the king. "Careful, your grace," he called with a half a smile. "If the beast soils my cloak, I'm sending her bill to Master of Coin." Robert laughed, and the sound rattled towers. "Fear not, lion shit. She prefers tastier game." Memshaw. The host wound through the city gates and onto the Roserad. Behind them rose dust. Cheers. Fear. Stormfire's wings beat once, twice, and suddenly the sky bowed before her as she climbed in a spiral of black. Sunlight fired upon her scales like sparks on coal. The royal host marched beneath that shadow, drummers pounding, banners snapping, a dragon reaving south once more, but bearing a stag's crown. They camped the first night on the Mander's wide shore, where twilight awoke fireflies to swirl about the tents like wayward embers. Robert strode from pavilion to pavilion, mug in hand, trading boasts with sellswords, planning tomorrow's fording. In the silent dark beyond the torches, Ned watched Stormfire circle high above, moonlight glancing white off her wings. She wheeled, dove, and vanished into the tree line. Seconds later, the forest erupted in a blaze that punched the horizon ablaze. A chorus of shouts rose, horses screaming. Ned ran, boots pounding, cloak streaming. He burst into a clearing to find the dragon hunched over a stag, a wild heart scorched black, antlers smoking. Stormfire tore flesh free, eyes incandescent. Ned halted, chest heaving. The beast looked up, snout dripping blood, and hissed in greeting as though he too were lord of the hunt. The horror of it struck him. A dragon's appetite would soon rival an army's. What fields of men would feed her when no deer remained? "Easy, girl," Robert's voice echoed as he pushed through brush, a half-dozen guards at his heels. He paused at the scene, then laughed. The sigil devours itself. He knelt, examining antlers. A good omen, Ned. The stag bows to the dragon, but in the end, they are one. No. Ned looked to the burning trees, the smell of char, the fear in the guard's eyes. He saw a kingdom teetering above wildfire, waiting for one careless spark to ignite. At dawn, Stormfire carried her first rider. Robert approached with a howdah of blackened steel and leather, built by Cohoric smiths, lined with chains and straps. He dismissed the straps with a scoff, mounted barehanded. The beast crouched, wings trembling. Robert gripped the base of her neck, planted one knee between ridges, and shouted, "Fly!" She leapt. The host below gasped as 20 feet of obsidian muscle vaulted skyward. Robert's war cry thundered from the clouds, rolling across the river. Stormfire climbed, wings gouging the wind. Robert's cloak ripped free, spiraling behind like shed skin. Higher they soared, sun blazing, until the king became a silhouette astride flame itself. Soldiers fell to their knees. Sir Barristan raised his sword in salute. Jaime grinned in reckless wonder. In the camp's heart, Ned watched, heart sinking with every heartbeat. He alone saw past the glory to the truth. The dragon obeyed today, but dragons remembered blood and fire. One day Stormfire would choose her own skies, and no king forged of flesh and bone could chain the wind. When Stormfire angled into a dive, Ned's breath seized. She plummeted, to cheers, to terror, then snapped her wings wide, arresting her fall in a thunderclap of air that trampled tents and toppled men. Dust and smoke rippled outward like a wave. She alighted upon the berm, neck arching. Robert dismounted, face split by wind-whipped glee, hair standing in Inca-black spikes. "By the gods, Ned," he yelled, voice cracked raw. "I felt every storm that ever birthed a Baratheon coursing through me." Ned forced a smile that never reached his eyes. Word traveled swift to Dorne that Robert now rode upon the back of his monster. In the shadow-strewn halls of Hellholt, Prince Corin Martell sharpened a dagger and listened as messengers described Stormfire's flight. Corin had bled at the trident. He knew the weight of Robert's hammer. He wrote to Doran, "We cannot meet a dragon in open field." Yet Dorne was fire-forged. Her mountains bore secret paths older than the Rhoynar, and somewhere beneath the Scorpion Pass, A weapon older than dragons waited, black as moonless water. The royal host crossed the Mander, entered the Reach. Lord Mace Tyrell rode north with a welcoming party, Tyrell roses clasped in gold. Robert feasted beneath banners thick with dew, jested with Margaery Tyrell, praised the green fields. Stormfire roosted on Garland Tyrell's tall grain tower, gnawing on a bull gifted from Old Town. Lord Mace sought favor, but Robert's eyes fixed always on the horizon, on Dorne's red sands beyond the mountains. He slept little. Dreams plagued him, dragons wheeling above bleeding stags, castles aflame, a shadowy figure crowned in molten copper, who called his name in High Valyrian. At dawn he would rouse Stormfire and climb into the cold air, chased by nightmares he dared not share. Ned wrote letters to Winterfell, to Jon Arryn, to Stannis at Dragonstone. He begged his wife's counsel, though ravens flew slow. He urged Jon to speak reason to the king, but no reply came. Rumor said the hand's sickness had worsened. Some whispered he had died. Ned feared treachery, but whose? Jaime Lannister grew restless. Sword hand yearning for glory. He sparred daily, golden armor glinting, telling bawdy tales of King Aerys's cruelties. Yet when Stormfire swept low, he would glance upward with haunted eyes. The dragon flame that once licked the Mad King now served the man who had replaced him. Irony cut like Valyrian steel. Varys observed all. Cersei's plotting, Renly's pageants, Ned's fumbling letters. Intrigue thickened as summer heat. The spider's whispers drifted through canvas and canvas, weaving a web of possibility. If Robert fell, if the dragon broke free, if Boy King crowned Boy King with lion's mane. But Varys served a higher ideal, or so he told himself, fingering the ring that hid a pinprick of ash on his fingertip, ancient as the sorceries of Valyria. One bright noon Stormfire molted, shedding scales like coins onto the camp. A blackened shard pierced Sir Boros Blount's greave, lodging in flesh. Grand Maester Pycelle treated him with boiling wine while muttering of contagions. Robert ordered every scale gathered, melted, forged into rings for his captains. Dragonsteel, he named the alloy, though the smiths claimed it no harder than iron. Symbol mattered more than strength. Ned walked among tents draped in lavender shadows cast by the dragons circling overhead. He found boys of 15 calling themselves Drakegard, painting shields with fiery stags. He found old knights sharpening spears tipped with black dragon bones scavenged from Stormfire's molting. The camp smelled of burning ambition, a tinderbox awaiting Robert's spark. That spark struck atop Prince's Pass. Scouts returned, dust-caked, whispering of Dornish banners massed beyond the narrow gorge. 10,000 spears, they said, under Lord Anders Euronwood, blocking the descent to the desert. Robert's council gathered at dusk, wind howling over the crags. Stormfire perched on a spire, wings mantled against the gale. They mean to freeze us on the heights, Renly observed, cloak snapping. We need not descend, Jaime noted, eyeing the dragon with grim fascination. Let your beast cleanse the defile. We ride over Char. Ned spoke, voice taut. That defile harbors shepherds' caves and crofts. Innocence will burn. Then? Robert stared into the gorge's shadowy maw. Torches flickered far below like dying fireflies. He looked to Stormfire, who returned his gaze with predatory calm. Igne Draconis, Thoros of Myr murmured, eyes aflame. Fire is mercy, a clean death among winds. Robert's fingers tightened on his hammer. He heard the tridents roar in his blood, the thunder of Rhaegar's breastplate splitting. He closed his eyes, seeing Elias Babe dashed against stone, hearing Lyanna's last whisper. Justice, vengeance, power. So hard to tell apart when they bled into his veins. He mounted Stormfire without a word. The council scattered, caught between awe and dread. Ned reached, but Jaime's gauntlet halted him. Let him, the Kingslayer said softly. One slaughter now may spare many later. Stormfire climbed the wind howling over ridge. Robert guided her into the clouds, hammer strapped. Lightning licked their wings. Below, the gorge awaited, a black throat promising a phoenix's sunrise. High above, Robert hesitated. His breath plumed in the frozen air, mingling with dragon smoke. He beheld the specks of campfires, each a household, each a story. He thought of the girl he had loved and lost, of bastards sired and disowned, of wine-drowned nights. The hammer at his side felt heavier than a mountain. In that moment he knew he could let it fall, loose a holocaust that would echo for centuries. Stormfire sensed the pulse of power in his chest, the wavering chord. She growled, wings jittering. Robert whispered, voice carried away by the wind. "Mercy, girl, not yet." He banked, turned her northward. The dragon roared protest, flame licking her jaws, but he pressed knees to her scales. She obeyed, albeit grudging, circling back to the camp. Robert landed, amid stunned silence. Dismounted, met Ned's eyes. "We march at dawn," he said. "On foot. Through the pass. If the Dornish want my homage, they'll wrest it from my hands, not from ash." Ned's relief was palpable. Jaime exhaled. Renly bit his lip, disappointed. Thoros gazed skyward, searching for prophecy's broken thread. Stormfire hissed, wings shivering, a smolder banked yet unquenched. Dawn cracked Prince's Pass, spilling white light on two armies staring across a ravine littered with boulders and scrub. Dornish spears gleamed orange, helms swathed in scarves. Yarnwood's banner, a black portcullis on gold, flap. Robert's host arrayed in disciplined rows, storm banners rippling, Stormfire's towering shadow dancing across shields. The wind died. For a heartbeat, the mountains held their breath. Then Robert stepped forward, hammer resting on mailed shoulder, and bellowed for parley. Yarnwood came alone, mounted on a lanky sand steed. The two met mid-bridge, words lost to the waiting ranks. Ned watched body language. Robert's open palms, Yarnwood's rigid spine. At one point the Dornish lord glanced toward Stormfire, jaw tense. Robert spoke again, slower, and Yarnwood's shoulders eased a fraction. They parted. Yarnwood returned to his line, raised a gauntlet, and his banners lowered. Spears dipped. Cheers erupted from Baratheon ranks. Robert raised both fists, triumphant. The pass opened. Stormfire shrieked, exhaling fire harmlessly into the sky. Robert's gamble had worked. The Dornish would grant passage, perhaps hostages, perhaps tribute. No blood spilled this day. Yet peace remains fragile when born beneath dragon wings. That night, assassins crept through camp, slipping past lax sentries drunk on victory. Ned woke to the clang of steel near Robert's tent. He burst inside to find the king grappling a dark-clad figure as Stormfire hissed, chains taut. Blood sheeted Robert's arm. His hammer smashed skull. A second assassin darted past Ned, blade gleaming, but Stormfire lunged, jaws snapping, jaws closed, and half a man collapsed in two twitching parts. Chaos. Guards flooded in. Robert bellowed for healers, for heads. The bodies bore no sigils, no marks. Varys would later whisper of coin traced to Old Town, though some insisted Lannister gold glinted in the purse. Robert's wound was shallow, yet humiliation cut deeper. Even a dragon could not guard against daggers in the dark. He ordered double watch, tripled Stormfire's chains, forbade wine to any man not on duty. The camp bristled with suspicion. But suspicion cannot cage a dragon's pride or a king's rage. At dawn, Robert announced they would proceed not merely through the pass, but all the way to Sunspear. "Dorne will bend," he declared, "or burn. Their sand steed carried assassins to my tent. I will answer with fire." Ned pleaded caution. Jaime shrugged, eager for war. Renly smiled, visions of glory dancing. Only Thoros trembled, his prophecies twisting like snakes devouring tails. And Stormfire, sensing her master's wrath, roared, belching a halo of flame that scorched the banners overhead. A dark sun rising, promising a future written not in ink nor blood, but in cinders raining upon the realm. Thus the royal host descended into Dorne, the dragon's roar preceding them like thunder before the monsoon. And the tale of Robert Baratheon, bearer of the Stormfire, strode across the seven kingdoms destined to be etched in every maester's chronicle and every child's fearful lullaby. Yet even legions are but sparks in the vast forge of history, and some sparks kindle fires no mortal hand can douse. And so the southward march began. Okay. Dawn broke over the pale dunes like a blade sliding free of its scabbard, etching hard shadows across every ridge and hollow. The royal host moved south in creaking columns, ranks of storm banners flapping above the shifting sand. Men accustomed to green hills and rain-soaked fields marched now through a land of silence and glare, their helms growing hot as kettles beneath the sun. Even war horses bred in the reach tossed sweating heads in misery, snorting at the choking dust. But Robert Baratheon strode at the vanguard, hammer balanced on one shoulder, his dragon perched on the other. Stormfire's wings hung partly unfurled to catch every breath of rising heat, casting a moving island of shade over the king. Each time the beast's tail lashed the air, sand rippled in waves behind her, and soldiers fell back lest a casual flick send them sprawling. For 3 days and 3 nights, they advanced along the ancient road the Valyrians had once called the Emberway. Cool streams were scarce, but Robert's quartermasters had learned caution since the Trident. Wagon trains groaned beneath casks of river water hauled from the Reach. Still, the barrels shrank faster under Dornish sun than a sailor's patience on a becalmed sea. Half a score men collapsed each day, tongues blackened. They were heaved into the shade of supply carts until they woke or failed to wake. Robert ordered extra water rations for the weakest, gruffly spurning complaint. "I will not have the small folk whisper that a king with a dragon let his men die of thirst," he said. And so the king drank little himself, though sweat carved white rivers through the dust on his arms. At twilight on the 4th day they reached the ruins of Vaethus' western outpost, a scatter of fallen towers long ago, gutted in Nymeria's last war. Robert claimed the tallest stump for his tent. Stormfire tested her wings, soaring in widening circles until the sky blushed violet. From below her cry rolled across the emptiness like thunder chasing itself along canyon walls. Even those veteran in storms, Endsiges, felt their hearts hammer at the sound. A living storm grown too large for earthbound fears. Ned Stark walked the camp perimeter as dusk deepened, cloak heavy with grit. At an abandoned well shaft he found Thoros of Myr kneeling, palms pressed to the cracked stones. Flames danced along the red priest's fingers like fireflies, guttering in the desert wind. Ned halted, wary. He had seen Thoros toy with torch-tipped swords in jousts, but this was something wilder. "What do you seek, priest?" he asked. Thoros' eyes glimmered as coals. "The Lord of Light shows me shadows upon these stones. Dragons dream here. The ground quivers with their memory." Ned crouched, touching the stone, cold, rough, lifeless. "I feel only ruin." "Flame and ruin are twins," Thoros murmured. "One births the other, as night births nightmares." He rose, fire extinguishing with a soft sigh. "Tell your wolf-hearted lord to watch the king's dreams. They are a flame, and flames burn the dreamer first." Ned opened his mouth to question, but Thoros was already striding away, red robes snapping like whipcord. That night Robert gathered his captains in a half-collapsed tower room, torches wedged into skull-shaped sconces. A fresh map of Dorne's interior lay spread across a cracked table. Tiny wooden figures, stags lacquered black and dragons painted crimson, marked their own host. Carved scorpions represented Dornish spears barring the way to Sunspear. Robert gestured, hammerhead thudding stone. "We strike here at Ghost Hill first," he said, voice graveled by thirst. "Ironwood's honor buys us safe passage, but it is Ghost Hill that commands the coast road. Take it and Sunspear lies open." Sir Jaime traced the coastline with a gauntleted finger. "We could sail half the host down the broken arm, land behind them, force a pincer." "Scouts report watchtowers every 3 leagues," Ned objected. "If one lights a warning pyre, Sunspear will bar its gates long before our sails appear." Renly smiled. "Then let them bar the gates. A dragon sees no gates, only tinder." The talk turned circular. Scorpions, supply wagons, the speed of war galleys versus the patience of camels. Robert listened, yet his gaze wandered often to the open window. Outside, Stormfire was a darker shape against the star-spangled sky, looping above the campfires until her shadow passed like an eclipse across the ruins. A hush followed each pass, men staring upward in rapt dread. No song rose in camp that night, only the muted clatter of armor adjusting, and the soft curses of men trying to sleep with steel helmets as pillows. Before first light, Ned woke to screams. He burst from his tent, sword bare, to see a legion of ravens wheeling above the central cookfires, wings blacker than the dying night. Beneath them skittered Stormfire, tail lashing, jaws snapping as she leapt again and again, trying to catch one in her teeth. Ravens scattered in spirals of ink, then dove, cawing, harassing, jabbing. Robert stomped toward the frenzy, roaring, but his voice was lost in the beating wings. A raven grazed the dragon's eye. Stormfire shrieked, a blast of flame erupting skyward. Black feathers caught fire midair, spiraled down like sparks. The surviving birds ascended, regrouped in wheeling rings, then scattered, vanishing into dawn's wash. Maester Ronald found Ned beside the dragon's perch a half-bell later, while Robert inspected a tiny scratch on Stormfire's eyelid. "Ominous," the Maester murmured. "Ravens in such number often portend death." "Ravens always portend messages," Ned replied. "Let us hope this one may yet be read." The message found its words an hour later. A scout from the vanguard rode in, horse-lathered, cheeks striped with tears of dust. He knelt before the king. "Ghost Hill burns, your grace, a pyre to rival the sun of the world. They saw your dragon, lit half their stores alight, then rode for Sunspear as though hell nipped their heels." Robert's jaw twitched, either anger or amusement. "Then we ride faster," he said. "Show them hell overtakes any who flee." The march resumed, pace doubled. Men grumbled but obeyed, spurred by fear of being left behind in the desert. Stormfire ranged ahead, scouting from on high before settling at evening beside the king's tent to gnaw charred goat bones fetched by 24 trembling kitchen boys. Each sunrise she woke larger, as though the burning sun itself forged new plates of scale across her ribbed belly. The Maester estimated her length near 30 feet by the 7th day, the span of her wings near double. A warship aloft. At Salt Shore, they found villages emptied, wells salted, livestock driven inland. Dornish outriders shadowed the flanks but never struck. Still, arrows appeared in the sand behind column ends, each shaft painted crimson with a single word in old Rhoynish glyphs: fire. Robert ordered the arrows gathered, burned, then rode laughing at the silent threat. Yet the sight of those shafts lodged deep in the hearts of the footmen, and songs turned to whispers when stars emerged above nameless dunes. One evening, Ser Barristan Selmy approached Ned, face pale. "The king's dreams grow darker," he confided. "I hear him mutter of rivers boiling and towers tumbling. He wakes drenched, calls for drink, then drifts again into the same mire." "Then?" "He trusts you," Ned said. "Speak to him by day when the sun is bright." "I cannot pierce the armor of a dream," Barristan replied, eyes heavy. "Steel fails against shadows." 2 nights later, shadows bled into flesh. Vultures followed the host, black pinpricks against turquoise sky. Their numbers swelled grotesquely, as though unseen carrion drew them. A picket patrol disappeared, 20 men failing to return from a rocky ridge. At dawn, the search party found only a circle of ash and melted steel, the sand fused into black glass like a mirror. Inside lay 20 helms, neatly arranged upside down, each holding a severed hand still curled around a hilt. Ned recognized the sigil of House Penrose on one bracer. Stormfire sniffed the glass, hissed, retreated. Robert studied the ring of helms, saying nothing. Jaime cursed the Dornish savagery. Renly turned green. Thoros of Myr murmured a prayer over every hand, fingers brushing char. Ned knelt, lifting a shard of fused sand. Smooth on one side, jagged on the other, the edge of a mirror that reflected his eye in warped silver. He wondered what flame could burn so hot the night before, when Stormfire had been tethered beside Robert's pavilion under heavy guard. That night, Robert summoned his captains beneath a sky thick with storm clouds despite the arid wind. Lightning growled on the horizon, unseen rain lines striking some distant mountain. "No more delays," the king declared. "We make for the Torrentine, ride its valley, straight to Sunspear. Supplies run thin. Every day the Dornish bleed us without drawing a blade." "Them said all. The Torrentine is swift," Barristan cautioned. "Its waters are treacherous this season. Bridges may be out." Robert's grin flashed. "Then I'll build a bridge of fear." "Stormfire will fly above the waters. Let any stonesmith still brave enough follow our example." He looked to the dragon, who preened along her shifting armor. "Will you carry my hammer across the river, girl?" The dragon's rumble felt like the promise of thunder given shape. Ned spoke. "And if the river surges higher than her breath?" Robert's gaze hardened. "Then we drown forging history." Better drowned in conquest than shrunk by cowardice. No voice answered, though many throats clenched on words. Orders were dispatched. Siega wagons lightened. Wounded men left at a makeshift redoubt with 200 guards. Varys quietly advised the wounded be sent west instead. He feared the desert more than Dornish steel. Robert waved him off. On the 14th day the host reached the torrents, a green ribbon carving canyons of red rock. Meltwater from the mountains had swollen its course. Foam snarled around jagged pillars like wolf fangs. The ruin of a wooden bridge jutted from one bank, snapped timbers dangling like rib bones. Robert surveyed the torrent from a sandstone bluff, Stormfire circling overhead. With a wordless shout, he climbed onto her back. Ned's heart tightened. Thunder roared, though no rain fell. Wind caught Robert's cloak as Stormfire leapt. She skimmed the river, wing beats hammering the air. Ned counted heartbeats, 80 yards across, 90, the far bank rushing. Mid-span a sudden updraft struck. Dragon and rider tilted, wings wrenching. Robert clung, roaring, as Stormfire struggled to right herself. Water spume soaked Ned's boots even from the bank. But Stormfire was forged of flame and hunger. She regained balance with a titanic heave, soared high, then swooped, rising above the far bank. Robert threw back his head triumphant. Cheers rattled stones. The dragon wheeled, returning. She touched down on the near bank, talons skating across pebble beds until her body slammed into a silt dune. Robert slid down, sand cascading off his armor. "Easy, girl," he soothed, though his voice trembled with exultation. He turned to his army. "Build rafts for the foot," he bellowed. "Horse and baggage will cross at dawn. Any man who falters will answer to me and my dragon." Work began at once. Trees were scarce. Men hacked scrub willows, lashed driftwood, scavenged the bridge wreck. Thoros helped fell a twisted ironwood, chanting as axes bit. Sparks leapt from each stroke. Some swore the trunk bled smoldering sap. By sunset, crude rafts dotted the shallows, bobbing like corpses in a lake. Barristan oversaw loading wounded and supplies. Jaime supervised cavalry lines. Renly in silk even here, measured draft with a silver rod as though playing merchant prince. Ned doubled sentries, fearing Dornish strikes. None came that night. Instead the sky cracked open like stone splitting in a forge. Lightning split black clouds. Acid blue veins illuminating the camp in frozen flashes. Wind roared, tents buckled. Stormfire shrieked from her chain yard, wings battering the air. Robert pushed through driving sand to her side, shouting for calm, but thunder drowned every word. Then, the lightning found the river. A bolt fell into midstream, exploded in steam that climbed black and boiling. A second struck a raft. Pitched timber burst, men hurled screaming. Stormfire hissed, eyes dead white in each flash. A third jagged spear of skyfire crashed against the bank, upon Stormfire's haunch. What happened next? No man later recounted the same. Some swore the bolt glanced off her scales, ricocheting into sky. Others said her wings lit like white glass, ribs glowing. All agreed on one thing. The dragon went mad. Stormfire's roar drowned thunder. She clawed free of chains as though they were children's ribbons, talons shredding iron links. Robert lunged, arms wide, calling by name. A tail as thick as mast swept him aside, hammer flying into the mud. Stormfire's wings snapped open, spans wider than siege towers, and she vaulted skyward. Tether rings ripped from stone, tent poles snapped like arrows. Hurricane winds flattened campfires, scattering sparks across wagons stacked with pitch. Ned recovered first, bellowing orders. Men scrambled to douse flames as wagons erupted. A supply cart exploded as pitch met torch. Fire raced through canvas. Horses broke tether. Screaming, soldiers trampled one another, half blind in dust and smoke. Above, Stormfire spiraled. Lightning reflected in her scales like gods forging blades across her skin. She banked high, hovered, then dove back toward camp. "Scatter!" Ned shouted, though few heard. The dragon tidled her head, nostrils flaring, and expelled a jet of fire so hot the night rippled. It struck the central cook line, immolating cauldrons, melting iron. A gout of flame arced through half-collapsed tents, turning silk to liquid sunrise. Men became torches before they could scream. Panic roared louder than flame. Robert staggered from smoke, hammer miraculously in hand. He shouted Stormfire's name again and again, voice ragged as a war horn cracked by too many battles. The dragon wheeled, shook fire from her jaws, then dove at the king. Ned's world narrowed to a single line, between dragon and man. He hurtled forward, sword forgotten, arms out. Yet, Jaime was faster. The king's lair threw himself at Robert, knocking the king flat just as talons slashed past, missing by inches. Stormfire climbed again, roiling smoke curling along her belly. Barristan and Thoros rallied crossbowmen, but arrows glanced off scales like raindrops off slate. The dragon banked over burning wagons, peeled back, and struck again. Hammered iron pots exploded, scattering molten stew. Yd. Renly, face mottled with soot, dragged a boy from beneath a falling pole. Varys vanished. Some swore he melted into shadows like a shade. Ned found Robert half buried in ash. The king's leg bent at a jagged angle. Bone glimmered white beneath torn greaves. Blood pooled bright in flickers of flame. Jaime knelt, binding cloth around the limb. Robert pushed at him, eyes ablaze with something half pain, half grief. "She doesn't know," he rasped. Lightning drove sense from her. "I must call her back." "You'll bleed out first," Ned said, forcing Robert flat. "Let maesters mend you." "A king without a dragon is half a king," Robert whispered. Stormfire turned again, heading for the ammunition wagon stacked with scorpion bolts tipped in wildfire glass. Spoils taken from King's Landing's Alchemists' Guild. A single spark could light Holocaust. Ned saw it, felt his ribs squeeze. He shouted, but the roar of flame drowned all. Thoros sprinted to meet the dragon, red sword raised. In the surreal glare, his scarlet robes whipped like living flame. He plunged the sword tip into the sand, flinging both arms wide. Eldritch words poured from his throat, older than the Rhoynar, older than Castlestone. Fire danced around him, coalescing into a shimmering wall. Stormfire slammed into that wall mid-dive. An explosion of light erupted. White, red, violet, casting shadows flat across dunes. The dragon recoiled, screeching, wings tattered with sparks. Thoros sagged, robes ablaze. Barristan caught him, smothering cloth with a cloak. The dragon rocketed skyward, this time never circling. She streaked east, toward the breaking dawn, trailing embers that rained like burning hail across dunes until distance swallowed them. Silence fell. Silence punctured by crackle of smoldering wood, by moans of burnt men, by the hiss of river water scooped to quench flame. Above, lightning withdrew, clouds paling. Stars blinked uncertainly. Ned sank to his knees beside Robert. The king's face sagged gray beneath soot, mouth tight. Blood seeped through Jaime's tourniquet. Maester Ronald arrived breathless, kneeling, packing the wound with moss boiled in honey. Jaime's hands shook as he pressed the bandage. Barristan set Thoros gently on sand, Red Priest half-conscious, singed bald. For hours they worked. Triage tents erected, burned salves mixed. Lads hauling water till their arms failed. Ned directed surgeons, soot lines marking tears down his face. By dawn's true light the camp smoldered like the ruin of Summerhall. Wagons gutted, pitch-black streaks, charred spears scattered like spent arrows. 400 men lay dead or dying. 30 horses gone. Provisions for a fortnight burned or waterlogged. And Stormfire, queen of Robert's dreams, was a black dot on the horizon, vanished. Robert drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering names. Lyanna, Stormfire, even Rhaegar. When the maester at last secured him with poppy milk, Ned retreated to the bluff above camp. Sword dangling, forgotten. The river still roared, indifferent. Across the water, dust hung in sunbeams like ghost ash. Somewhere beyond those ridges, a dragon flew. Wounded perhaps, confused certainly, but alive and growing with every rising sun. Jaime approached, eyes raw. The lords will question everything now. A king who cannot command his dragon is worse off than one who never had her. We command ourselves first, Ned said. Ride west. Find the wounded redoubt. Bring their healers here. If Robert lives, the realm may heal with him. If he dies, Jaime shrugged, gauntlet scraping hilt. If he dies, the realm bleeds anew. They stood silent, watching the torn sky heal to pale blue. Then Ned asked, almost a whisper, "Why did you push him from her talons?" Jaime blinked. "Because I swore once to protect a king from dragons. I failed that time. I would not fail again." With that he turned, cloak ragged with cinders, and strode toward the makeshift infirmary. Ned remained until his shadow shrank to nothing. Wind off the desert rattled coilgrass, bearing the faintest scent of smoke. Yet beneath it lingered another scent. Sharper, metallic, like hot iron quenched in blood. He realized it was fear, pure and ancient, stirring deep within him. 3 days later, ravens brought word from Sunspear. Prince Doran offered safe conduct if the king would parley without dragon. The irony bit deep. Robert lay fever-bitten, legs stitched, breath shallow. Cersei's seal arrived too, golden wax broken by frantic courier. The queen demanded news and counsel. Tywin Lannister's letter accompanied hers, short and cold as a drawn dagger. A stag with broken legs should remember the lion walks strongest when rivals limp. Varys translated that for Ned, though Ned required no translation. Supplies dwindled. Renly argued for turning north, returning to fertile lands. Jaime favored capturing nearby Vaeth to rest and resupply. Barristan urged sending envoys to Sunspear to stall for aid. Lords quarreled over water rations. Duels nearly erupted. On the fourth dusk after Stormfire's exodus, a lone figure appeared among the dunes. A young woman in sand-colored cloak, leading a thin brindled sand steed. Guards challenged her. She raised empty hands. Ned rode out with a small escort. The woman threw back her hood to reveal sun-bronzed features, black hair damp with sweat, and eyes dark as midnight wine. "I am Arianne Martell," she said. "I come with words from my father, Prince Doran." Ned inclined his head, his men tensed. She produced a sealed letter. "He offers ships at Planky Town to bear your wounded to Old Town for healing, provided hostilities cease and the king himself swears, before the Mother's mercy he will not unleash dragon fire upon Dorne." "The dragon is gone," Ned said. "So rumor claims." Her gaze swept the ruined camp. "But rumors may lie. My father hopes truth still breathes here." Ned studied her. Pride tempered by worry lined her brow. He thought of a realm teetering. "Your father's mercy is welcome. Yet the king can neither ride nor sail for weeks. Then ships shall come to him." She replied, "Send sign you accept. A banner of white flown from the highest mast will see Dornish sails cut upriver to you." Ned glanced to Barristan, who rode near. The old knight nodded slowly. "So long as they are healer ships, not war galleys." Dorne has known Dragonburn enough, Arianne said. We would heal, not scorch. Ned accepted the letter, promised answer by dawn. Arianne mounted, wheeled her steed, and vanished into dusk. That night Ned read Doran's words to Robert. The king, half lucid, muttered assent. If they bear wine and poppy, let them come, he rasped. I will pledge peace till my dragon returns. And if she never returns? Ned asked gently. Robert's eyes glimmered fever bright. Then I ride after her on one leg if I must. Maester Ronald shooed Ned out, administering milk of the poppy. Ned paced the torchlit aisles of canvas infirmaries, passing rows of wounded. Flamelight flickered on bandaged faces. He felt the realm balanced on a blade's edge sharper than any Marmon steel. One gust, one rumor, could tilt them all into abyss. And somewhere above, a dragon measuring the skies. He returned to the bluff, carrying parchment. By moonlight he wrote a reply to Doran: acceptance of healer ships, cessation of hostilities, promise of no dragon fire. Though he prayed the words would not prove lie by Robert's later will. Beside that letter, he penned another to Winterfell, to Catelyn and to Jon Arryn. If the hand lives still. He spoke of dragons, of broken kings, of a future uncertain as sand dunes in the wind. When he sealed the scrolls, he used his own wax, no sigil. Secrets traveled lighter, unburdened by banners. At dawn, a white sail rose upon the highest spar of the surviving supply galley, anchored mid-river. Ned watched as sun struck it, turning linen into a blazing shard of innocence. In the distance, 3 points of color edged the horizon. Dornish sails, orange trimmed with black. He exhaled. Behind him, the camp creaked awake, wounded groaning, crows already circling new graves. A breeze stirred, carrying with it, faint but distinct, the sound of a distant roar. Every man froze. Heads tilted skyward. The roar came again, echoing across canyons. Not lightning, not thunder, but a dragon's call, hunger raw and wrath bright. Ned's heart lurched. He scanned empty skies, only gulls wheeling. Yet there it was, borne on wind, stormfire seeking. A single moment hung, weightless. Would she see white flag and hold, or see desert tent cluster and strike again? Ned closed his eyes, whispered a prayer to gods old and new. Somewhere the dragon roared a third time, voice carrying the promise of fire reborn. When he opened his eyes, the sails still approached, white pennon still fluttered, and hope and dread mingled on every breath of morning. The tale of Robert Baratheon and the Stormfire was far from written. Ink still dripped from the quills of fate, and dragons cared little for mortal pens. Yet on that fragile morning, with desert sun painting gold upon ash, men dared believe that even broken kings might rise, or fall, upon the wings of the storm. Oh, Kai. The rising sun stretched like a molten blade over the dunes, flooding the river valley in copper light. Ned Stark stood on the bluff above the battered camp and watched the Dornish sails creep toward them, triangular shadows against the blinding glare. But the roar that had rolled on the dawn's wind still thrummed through his chest like a distant drumbeat, and every heartbeat since had felt out of time, each moment floating, waiting for the inevitable thunder that followed a lightning flash. Around him men moved in wary silence, packing the few wagons that hadn't burned, stacking shields and spears whose halves were still warm from the great fire. Carts cantilevered under wounded moaned as they jostled across stone. Ash coughed from trampled sand with every step. Maester Ronald approached, robes smeared in sweat and rust-brown blood. "The king is awake, my lord," he said, voice chafed to a rasp. "He asks for you, and for wine, though Poppy keeps him slipping." He hesitated. His fever broke with a night's chill, yet I fear infection will chase it back. Ned nodded, but his gaze never left the bright line of horizon. "I'll come. Tell him the white sails approach. Tell him peace rides the river." The maester dipped his head, retreated. Ned inhaled the desert air and listened again, not with his ears, but with that earthbound sense that had guided him through 100 northern storms. The faint roar had ceased, replaced now by the whistle of canyon winds and the distant clamor of galleys' chains. Yet he felt Stormfire out there, circling, deciding. A dragon was no raven. Messages could not bridle her wings. Even a wounded dragon was a tempest that chose its own course. He descended the bluff. The camp sprawled like the husk of a shed skin, half concave with burned wagons, half convulsing with quick repairs. Robert lay in the largest pavilion, a makeshift charnel house of incense and poultices. The interior smelled of boiled horsetail and wine soured in the heat. The king propped himself on furs, bare chest sluiced with sweat, bandages on thigh and ribs. His eyes met Ned's as he entered, clear but rimmed red. "Your dragon still sings," Ned began, keeping his voice low, so it did not sound an accusation. Robert snorted and waved the thought aside. Hawks screech on high winds, a dragon roars by nature, and dragons return to roost. He dismissed pain with a grimace. How many ships? 3. Flying Prince Doran's colors. Narrow-built river runners, by the look dotting. Ned poured a flagon of watered wine, handed it to Robert. "Healers aboard," he swears. "Medicine and spies." Robert drained half the cup. "Yet we'll take the one to gain the other. Sunspear still kneels or burns." "Stark. Bow." Ned glanced at the linen walls, as though they might have ears. "No more talk of burning. Your dragon will decide that without counsel, if she returns wounded and cornered." "Stormfire follows strength," Robert growled. "These lightning-mad nights pass. A beast knows her master. A child does not choose her father." Ned's words slipped out sharper than intended. Robert's eyes narrowed. Ned pressed on. "We need provisions, not pride. When the Dornish see you cannot ride. When word reaches King's Landing that the dragon turned." "It did not turn," Robert barked. A muscle jumped along his jaw. "She panicked, and I still ride. On a litter if need be. The realm won't see a cripple. They'll see a king wounded in conquest, healed in flame." Ned stared a moment, then inclined his head. "As you say, your grace." He poured more wine, though Robert hadn't asked, then left before tempers frayed further. Outside, Sir Jaime sparred shirtless with 3 silent brothers of the Kingsguard, his sword ringing like a cracked bell. Sweat drenched his golden hair to bronze. When Ned passed, Jaime paused, sword lowered. "I hear the ships bring maesters wet enough to drown that Legin," he called. "Perhaps they can salvage the king's chivalry as well, if they find it among the ashes." Ned met his stare. "Mock him now, Kingslayer, yet you saved his life. I'll remember that." "Will he?" Jaime resumed the drill, steel flashing in the sun. "I've learned a king's gratitude is thinner than Dornish rice paper." The morning dragged on slow as honey. The galleys nosed upriver, sweeping past shattered rafts. Their decks glimmered with polished brass cauldrons and vials strung in nets, medicaments visible for all to see. On the prow of the lead ship, a sleek vessel dyed sea green, stood Arianne Martell, hair whipping in the wind. She lifted a hand in salute. Ned responded with a raised gauntlet. On the bluff the white flag still snapped. Tension coiled like a garrote across every neck. Unloading took hours. Dromedaries emerged, laden with casks of date wine, figs, and healing herbs. Dornish healers. Swathed head to toe in bleached muslin, fanned across the infirmaries with practiced calm. Maester Ronald watched them like a hawk over fledglings, yet accepted their help. "Das Orni, you." Arianne spoke first to Baratheon, who alone wore white armor unsmirched by soot, then asked to see the king. Ned escorted her. Inside the pavilion, Robert fixed her with bloodshot eyes. She bowed, not deeply, and greeted him in a voice that carried like silver wind chimes. "My father offers you the balm of peace, your grace, that we may share rivers rather than blood." Robert struggled to sit straighter. "Share them, once Dorne recalls the crown it bears." He paused, wincing as his thigh tensed. Yet peace is no stranger to me. Prove your ships hold healers, not daggers, and we will weigh your father's words." Arianne glanced to Ned, then to Maester Ronald, who nodded silent affirmation. She smiled. "Half sun, half shadow. We ask only that Stormfire not darken our skies. When she is calmed, when the realm sees her perched beside your throne, rather than raising your camps, then Prince Doran will kneel in person if you will ride to Sunspear in peace." Robert's laugh scratched like gravel. "The dragon is mine, princess. But I am not fool enough to promise the winds." He gestured to his bound leg. "When I ride again we will talk of kneeling." She pressed palm to chest. "So be it. Our ships remain to succor your wounded." She turned, silk swirling, and left without further word. Ned followed her into the glare. "You know the king's pride is an oak grown twisted," he said. "How far will Dorne bend before it breaks?" She stared at the sun-bleached dunes. "We bend as bowstrings, Lord Stark. But the arrow may yet fly, if the archer forgets where the point will land." She mounted her steed and rode back toward the riverbank. That afternoon Thoros of Myr woke under Barristan's watchful eye, bandaged head gleaming. Ned visited him beside the ash rings of last night's pyres. The priest's voice had thinned to parchment flutter. "My fire failed," he murmured as Ned knelt. "I saw a kite of shadows on the wind, and tried to net it with prayer." He coughed. Lips cracked. "Tell the king the Lord of Light forgives him, if he abandons flame for the living. Tell him dragons do not herald dawn. They devour it." "Dan?" "One." Ned squeezed his shoulder and promised nothing. 2 nights passed. No roar echoed across the moon-silver sky. The camp's heartbeat slowed. Stormfire's absence settled like dust on a forgotten shield. Not peace, merely lull. Dornish healers busied themselves with poultices of aloe and serpentine honey. Their presence began to feel ordinary, until the third dawn, when a horn shrilled from the south picket. Riders approached. 6 men clad in boiled leather the color of sunset, spears alive with ribbons. Their leader bore Euron Wood's portcullis. Ned met them beyond the palisade, shielded by 2 silent Kingsguard. The envoy bowed shallow. "Our lord regrets the shadow upon your camp. Euron Wood pledges safe escort to Vaith or to God's grace as you choose. We wish no dragon wrath upon sand that has known too much of fire." "We have healer ships and need only time," Ned said. "Return to your lord. We accept his escort when the king can ride." "A fortnight then." The envoy touched thumb to brow. "After that, vultures may feast on what Euronwood cannot protect." Ned's eyes narrowed. "Is that threat or warning?" "The desert cares not." The envoy spurred his horse and vanished into morning haze. That evening Ned found Barristan sharpening a dagger beside the infirmary's lanterns. "This war bleeds into puzzles," Ned said. "Dorne sues for peace yet warns of time. A dragon lurks unknown. Robert's wound festers unseen. The true battle is fear." The old knight dragged Whetstone along edge. "Fear of the dragon, fear of betrayal. Heal the king, fear will scab." "And Stormfire?" Ned asked. Barristan paused, lifted his steel. Lantern light danced on its tooth-like edge. "If she returns calm, hope. If she returns crazed, mercy, in whatever form." He slid blade home. That same night, a desert wind hammered the camp with bursts of grit. Ned slept little, dreams riddled by distant wing beats. Just before dawn a tremor quivered through canvas, like the touch of a giant's fingertip. He jerked awake. A second tremor followed, then a low boom, half roar, half thunder. Men shouted outside. He flung back the flap. The eastern sky burned with a ruddy glow, though the sun had not yet crested. A line of black smoke rose behind the ridge where the river curved. Ned's heartbeat thundered. He grabbed cloak, sword, and ran. The bluff gave vantage. Below, along the river's bend, lay the Dornish galleys, anchored. Or one had been. Now only broken ribs jutted from roiling water, fiery wreckage bobbing like torches. Flames licked the night's last shadows, reflecting red. On the bank figures scattered, yellow-robed healers screaming. sailors thrashing in shallows slick with burning oil. Stormfire plunged overhead in that instant, fiery belly incandescent. Her wings threw off sparks as she banked and dove, raking water with claws. She roared, a sound cracked with pain. Ned saw rents along her right wing membrane, lightning tears half healed, edges blackened. Her eyes glowed white with madness or fever. She lifted again, leaving a steam plume where talons had struck. "To arms!" Ned shouted down to camp. Horns blared. Crossbowmen rushed, though few had bolts left fit to pierce scale. He sprinted for the healers' tents. They lay directly beneath the dragon's arc. If Stormfire feared Dornish scent, she might strike again. Barristan intercepted him, armored, sword bared. "Protect the king," the old knight barked. "Hold," Ned countered. "The dragon aims at the galleys. Shielding Robert will not save the ships." Barristan thundered on. Ned followed. Lightning struck the river again. No flame. Stormfire's breath, igniting spilt oil. The second galley burst in a flower of blue and orange. Action flung timbers across dunes. A mast hurtled through the air, impaled a wain. Men ducked, horses panicked. Ned clambered onto a rock spur, waving arms. "Stormfire! Settle!" he shouted. Not that a beast would heed a stranger's voice, but he had to try. She circled, descending. Colossal jaws, agape. And there, amid chaos, appeared Robert Baratheon. The king limped from camp on crutches, cloak thrown over bare shoulders. His wounded leg bound stiff, but his chest heaved with rage and something fiercer. He hobbled toward the riverbank, ignoring shouts behind him. Jaime and Renly dashed after, but Robert swung crutch like a staff. "Back," he bellowed. "She'll see me." Stormfire's shadow eclipsed them. Robert planted himself on a low dune, flung his arms wide. "Stormfire, hear me!" The dragon reared, beat her wings, sand swirling. Ned's mouth dried. She opened jaws, then froze, head cocked, nostrils flaring. Smoke drifted around Robert, wreathing him in furnace glow. For breaths long as eons, man and beast locked eyes. Robert lowered his crutches, stepped forward, the weight made him stagger. "You flew far enough, girl," he rasped. "The world's wide, but my heart beats here." He thumped his chest with fist. "Come home." Stormfire descended, wings furled halfway. She landed so close, Ned felt the shock through stone. Talons planted, tail sweeping. Her head bent until golden eyes filled Robert's sky. Robert reached, palm trembling, laid it against her snout. Silence rang. Ned dared inhale. Jaime swore softly. Stormfire's pupils dilated. Eyelids shuttered once. She exhaled. A plume of smoke scented with burnt pine, not flame. Robert stroked along the scale ridge, murmuring praise. Slowly the dragon folded to her belly, wings drooping like sails gone slack. Robert sagged against her cheek. Half laugh, half sob. Cheers erupted across the camp. Hoarse, disbelieving. Ned closed eyes in thanks. The surviving healer galley's crew shouted relief. Stormfire's return quieted more than fire. It cauterized fear into awe once again. Yet 2 ships and 20 healers lay ruined. Lost. Prince Doran's gift had been savaged. Ned wondered at the price to follow. Robert allowed Jaime and Renly to help him back. Stormfire lumbering after, tail dragging. Maester Ronald fussed, rewrapping the king's wound, cursing new strains. Robert accepted scolding with grin wide as banners, though pain etched lines deeper. "She came home," he repeated, like a prayer of triumph. Ned joined council hours later beneath a canopy heavy with smoke. Robert presided from a carved oak chair. Stormfire sprawled behind, wings mantling shade. Imi, Renly, Barristan, Varys, Maester Ronald attended. Also, Arianne Martell. Face ash-streaked, eyes blazing with restrained fury. 2 healer ships burned, she said, voice icy. Among them my cousin Cavo and 12 Sand Sisters, sworn to the healing order. "Have you explanation, your grace?" Robert's jaw flexed. Lightning broke her mind that night. She lashed out at water, not Dorne. A beast's wound, not a king's order. The dead care little for cause. She retorted. My father will demand recompense, and pledges stronger than empty words. Renly scoffed. Demand what he dares. The dragon is ours. Dorne's healing cost in flames is the risk of any war. Arianne's stare cut like razors. Before she could speak, Ned slid between. Peace dangles by threads, he said. If blame circles we not a hangman's noose for the realm, we must show contrition indeed. Robert grunted. I'll send ships from Old Town loaded with grain and gold to Sunspear, double grain. He looked to Arianne. Tell Doran, the Stormfire will never again strike his waters unbidden. He glanced at Varys. Sea Raven sent. Varys bowed. With utmost haste, your grace. Jaime cleared throat. Meanwhile we journey north to Vaeth. Rest, rearm. Then march on Sunspear under escort, dragon at heel, but muzzled until parley. Robert's eyes lit. A ring of steel forged to her jaw. She'll despise that. Not a muzzle, Ned cut. A pledge. Stormfire will remain tethered outside Sunspear's walls. Addressing Arianne, he added, with Dornish engineers overseeing mooring and maesters tending her wounds. She studied him, then nodded once. I will carry that word. Council ended, though tension lingered in the tilt of every head leaving. For 5 days the host crawled northwest along the Torrentine's bank. Stormfire marched beside Robert's litter, tethered by 80 feet of chain forged from melted siege hooks. She tolerated the restraint, though each sunset she tugged thrice, wings beating until links sang like bells. Her wing tears oozed black ichor. Dornish salves helped knit them. Ned watched healers smear paste under luminous scales, each scale hot as a smith's iron. Supplies arrived from Vaeth's storerooms. Water skins, caravans of salted goat, casks of thick cactus liquor that stung tongues. Robert drank sparingly, determined to heal. Each dawn he forced himself to stand, leaning on hammer haft instead of crutch, limping 3 paces more than the morning prior. Jaime shadowed him, matching each step. On the 7th dusk they reached Vaeth's outer wall, a half-moon of sandstone towers above an oasis of date palms and shimmering pools. Lord Vaeth awaited, with a host of copper-helmed guards. Yet when Stormfire's silhouette blotted the sun, he knelt without prompting, offering keys and tribute. Chests of saffron, bolts of sky-blue silk, 10 swift sand steeds. Robert accepted with hearty laugh. His victory returned in his eyes. The host camped within Vaeth's walled date orchards. Stormfire settled near the largest reflecting pool, where she lapped water like molten glass. Children of Vaeth crept to glimpses. She bared fangs, yet did not flame. Word spread like wildfire. The dragon obeyed again. Ned met Arianne upon a moonlit terrace where orange blossoms tempered desert musk. She gazed at Stormfire's distant form, a black mountain hunched by the pool. Your king tamed storm and flame, she said, voice quiet. Perhaps even my father will yield him corridor to peace. Peace is forged, not yielded, Ned replied. And forging wounds, the smith same as the steel. She rested hands on stone balustrade. You speak like a maester, Lord Stark. Yet you ride beside a king who seeds whirlwinds. Does the wolf not fear the storm? Oh. He thought of Winterfell's cold halls, of children laughing in snows he could almost smell despite the desert heat. A wolf survives storms by sheltering the pack. I ride to see the young spared flame, even if flame crowns the sky. Arianne's eyes softened. May your gods shield them. Tomorrow I ride to Sunspear. My father must hear truth, not whispers. She stepped away. Hold your king to his pledges, Stark. Else desert sands will drink more than water. The next dawn, she departed with 10 lancers. Stormfire watched, snorted ash, tail thumping. Healing progressed. Maester Ronald removed Robert's stitches. The wound knitted like a stubborn vine. The king tested leg each morning, striding from one date palm to the next. By the 8th day he mounted a horse. Slowly, stiffly, but atop nonetheless, and rode a circuit of the oasis. Men cheered, war drums beat, morale rose. Ned, though, noticed Robert's gaze drift often skyward. A hunger still haunted him. Not the ale hunger Ned knew, but something keener. He caught Robert one dusk standing at Stormfire's side, brushing chains with fingertips. "She wants the air," Robert said without turning. "Faith's walls choke her." "Walls hold a truce," Ned answered. "Release her here and Dorne calls treachery." Robert exhaled through nose. How did Aegon roam half the world and bend it without a leash? He patted a scale like black glass. Perhaps because no lord dared shape his will. Ned stepped closer. Aegon rode when he chose, but old songs never say what price he paid on nights dragons burned towns unbidden. "We live now with those debts." Robert's hand fell. "Debts weigh me heavier than this leg." He met Ned's eyes, beard etched silver by moonlight. "Does your heart still follow me, old friend?" Ned swallowed. "Where the realm finds life, there I follow." Robert managed a crooked smile. "Then guide me through these dunes of politics, Ned." Storm and wolf, forging peace. It was the closest to plea Ned had heard from Robert since the rebellion. He clasped the king's arm. "We forged together." 10 days later, ravens returned. Ariane's message bore Doran's seal. Sunspear would receive the king under truce. Stormfire must remain 3 leagues from the palace, tethered and attended by maesters of both courts. Robert accepted with curt nod. Varys crafted letters pledging indemnity for healers lost. 15,000 gold dragons to be delivered by the Iron Bank of Bravos. Another letter to Cersei detailed the march, and requested fresh troops. Littlefinger, absent but ever lurking, would see funds moved swiftly. Preparations unfolded. Stormfire's mobile perch, a wheeled iron platform lined with sheep wool, was reforged with heavier anchor points. 80 Dornish sand steeds were yoked to haul it. Barristan drilled a new honor guard dubbed the Dragon Ring. 50 knights sworn to defend both king and dragon from foes and from each other, chosen from Stormlanders, Reachmen, and even 2 Dornish volunteers. Jaime oversaw forging of special hooks, quick release, in case the dragon needed to ascend suddenly. On the eve of departure, Prince Doran's final envoy arrived. Sir Manfrey Martell, broad-shouldered, walking with canes. He presented a sand glass as token. Clear glass filled with red and gold grains. "Turn this when you cross the Scourge," he instructed Robert. "If its sand empties before you reach Sunspear, the desert will claim you." A warning disguised as courtesy. Robert accepted, curiosity glinting. At dawn, the host rolled out from Vaeth. The dragon platform creaked across packed sand. Stormfire chained but head high, as if the golden crown of dawn itself were hers to wear. Robert rode ahead on a white gelding, hammer at saddle, leg braced but functional. Ned rode left flank, cloak snapping. Bells rang from Vaeth's towers. Children sang of fire and water intertwined. For 4 days, the column wound south, through canyons veined with pale agate. Scouts reported no hostile banners. Twice desert storms swept in. Dry thunder swirling pillars of sand, 100 feet tall. Yet Stormfire's wings beat gusts aside, shielding men. Some began to whisper. She was more guardian than threat. But on the 5th night, as they camped in the broken shadows of the Scourge's high arc, a natural stone bridge carved by ancient floods, strangers came bearing a gift. Ned sat before a low fire reading a coated raven from Winterfell. Ice harvester yields delayed. Bran ill with summer fever. When horns sounded, he rushed to Robert's pavilion. 3 figures advanced beneath white flags, 2 in wool cassocks, 1 in sand silk, hooded. Guards let them through. The hooded stranger knelt. "A boon for the king who bears the Stormfire," he said, voice echoing like hollow reed. He produced a small oaken chest, bound in bronze, set it at Robert's feet. "A token from the Citadel. Knowledge to heal wings." Robert frowned, motioned Ned forward. Ned knelt, inspected lock. Unsealed. He lifted lid. Inside lay a scroll, bound with iron clasp, and, beneath, a glistening vial of milky resin, swirling faintly in the lamplight. Maester Ronald leaned in. eyes wide. "Dragon glass salve," he whispered. "Rare. Made from ground obsidian, pine resin, basilisk blood. Said to knit scale and membrane like new." Robert's brow lifted. "A remedy fit for Stormfire." "If true," Ronald murmured, "it may close her winged tears in days." The hooded messenger bowed deeper. "The Citadel honors the balance of the realm. A healer's gift for a healer's wound." "Damn?" Robert grunted approval. "Name your reward." "Only that the dragon's fire never falls on the starry sept," the stranger answered, voice trembling. Robert laughed. "Done, Maester." They left without more. Ned watched them disappear into moonlit gulch, unease prickling. Gifts seldom wore honest faces in desert nights. Ronald applied the salve at dawn, smearing viscous resin along Stormfire's rents. The dragon winced but endured. By noon the raw edges looked less inflamed. Robert crowed, boasting that even maesters bent knee to his conquest. Ned filed suspicion away. On the seventh night, the red and gold sand glass was turned. Its grains trickled as the column crossed the scourge, that seasonal stream of brackish water curling like a serpent across flats. Stormfire waded the ford, chuffing steam. Robert lifted the glass for all to see, a reminder of desert's cold arithmetic. By midday of the ninth day, Sunspear's spires speared the horizon, bronze and sandstone gleaming. Palm groves swayed beyond white adobe suburbs. The sea glimmered azure beyond breakwaters. Ned felt tension ripple through ranks. Battle or welcome? Smoke rose nowhere. Peace banners fluttered on gatehouses. They halted at a designated plain 3 leagues distant, sand glass half empty. Dornish engineers guided the dragon platform to a sun-baked basin ringed by stone pillars. Anchors hammered into bedrock, chains affixed. Maesters from both camps inspected locks. Signed scrolls. Robert and a retinue of 100 rode on. Ned took his place beside the king. Jaime and Barristan followed. Renly, glittering in emerald lacquer, smiled like a tourney knight awaiting roses. Sand spiced the wind. At Sunspear's outer gate, Prince Doran awaited on a palanquin borne by guards. He wore robes the color of dusk, and held a staff topped with a carved sun and spear. Beside him stood 3 daughters, Arianne among them, and 2 grim spear maidens. When Robert dismounted, Doran bowed from waist. Pain evident. "Storms blow hard, your grace," he greeted. "Doran bows that Westeros may stand unbroken." Robert replied, voice loud across walls. "And dragons perch on stags' antlers, so peace may crest the wind. Let us speak where wine softens sun." Now. They entered the water gardens, fountains singing among orange trees. Ned breathed the cool mist as though it were northern snow. In a tiled pavilion, mosaic a summit unfolded. Doran spoke first, weaving words like silk banners. He lamented lost healers, accepted gold as tribute, praised Robert's restraint after the lightning madness, urged mutual roads reopening. Robert countered with offers of trade. Stormlands grain for Dornish horses, Crownlands timber for sand glass artisans. But when talk turned to Stormfire's future, echoes hardened. "A dragon tethered is a promise," Doran said. "She must never cross Dornish skies without my seal." Robert's beard bristled. "The dragon is the crown's sword. I will not sheath it at another lord's say-so." Doran's smile did not reach tired eyes. "Sunspear cannot bow to any sword that hovers overhead ready to strike. Trust a man's border's flame will not cross." Barristan leaned to Robert's ear. "Symbol, not subjugation?" Robert exhaled. "Very well," he said. "Stormfire flies no farther south than Vaeth without Dorn's consent. But she flies." He slammed fist to the table. "No chain hobbles her beyond time of parley." Doran nodded slowly. "Agreed. And should she breach that skyline, the Martells reserve right of defense." Ned sensed victory of sorts, but fragile as thin glass. They sealed accord with palm wine and signed parchments. Yet another matter rose like buried blade. "The Iron Throne levies taxes on southern ports," Doran reminded. Since Nymeria's time Dorne paid it lower tariff. Your ministers now demand parity with Old Town's levy. Robert scowled. Littlefinger's accounts bleed coin. War empties coffers. Doran dipped head. Peace replenishes them. Give us 3 years reprieve. Trade will render gold beyond any tax. Jaime murmured. He has the point there. Robert's gaze flicked to Ned. Ned gave a small nod. 3 years of calm could cool tempers. Robert grunted assent. A scroll signed, goblets clinked, applause polite. For a moment tension eased. Even Renly laughed with Ariana jest about Dornish wine overshadowing Reach vintage. Yet outside that courtyard the dragon waited. The realm teetered. Night-cloaked Sunspear in warm velvet. Robert's retinue was given suites in the old palace. Ned lay awake on tiled floor cooled by fountains, listening to distant gulls. He dreamed of icy winds and dragons of snow breathing silence. He woke before dawn, unease coiled. On the second day, parley shifted to alliances. Doran proposed marriage of his youngest to Renly, political, olive-branched. Renly flushed. Stun smiled, though eyes darted. Robert warmed. Yet little progress before midday heat urged siesta. Ned strolled balconies alone, absorbing sea breeze, when a scream erupted below. He raced to a narrow court. 2 guards grappled a lithe figure, cloaked in servant's garb. A third lay bleeding from throat. The captive hissed curses in Lysine. Ned knelt, ripping cloth. A young man, eyes rimmed purple, grip locked on thin stiletto crusted with blue powder. Jaime arrived, sword drawn. Poison, he spat, tasting air. Strangler dust. Intended for whom? Ned asked the assassin. He spat blood. Lion. Stag. All burn, he wheezed. Under torture he yielded little, hired by coins bearing Braavosi seal. Varys, summoned, examined purse. Frowned. Braavos seldom meddles directly. Another's mask. Menace. Robert roared rage. Doran apologized, ordered Sunspear scoured. Yet whispers bloomed. Some claimed assassin aimed for Martell, some for Robert, some for Ned. Fear reawakened. That night Stormfire's tether snapped a link. The watch reported she thrashed after sunset, wailing. Salve treatments accelerated healing. Wing membrane pulled taut, itching. Guards hammered new link. The dragon settled, but restlessly. Ned met Robert, under torchlight. We cannot linger. Sunspear's palace walls show cracks in trust. Robert downed goblet. One more dawn, then march. He rubbed leg. We ride to King's Landing in triumph. Dragon at my heels, peace treaty in satchel. Ned sighed relief. Yet as he turned away, he caught Robert's eyes drifting again to night sky, to stars glinting like shards of broken crown. Departure dawned pearl pink. The host formed lines outside Sunspear's gates, Dornish spectators lining parapets. Robert rode first, flanked by Barristan and Ned. Arianne presented him a coronet of silver shaped as coiling sun rays. He accepted, though did not don it, placing it at saddle. Trumpets sounded. The procession moved. Behind them, Stormfire's platform creaked, drawn by teams. Chains clinked. The dragon shifted, wings half spread to taste sea air. They crossed the plain at measured pace. Sandglass turned again. Ned allowed hope to sprout. Treaties signed, assassins foiled, salaries of peace owed to courage. Yet midday heat pressed heavy. A dust devil rose behind, swirled across path, startling horses. Renly's mount reared. He calmed it with flourish, smiling at cheering soldiers. Then a distant horn moaned from east dunes. A second answered west. Ned's hand dropped to hilt. Barristan's gaze sharpened. War cries of the Eulers, he muttered. And the man-woody. Robert cursed, raised hammer. At his side the Martell escort looked equally alarmed. From behind dune crests columns of riders poured. Hundreds banners snapping. A red viper on black, a silver skull on indigo. They fanned out, surrounding. Dust churned beneath hooves, glint of javelins. Doran's envoy galloped forward, shouting. The attackers ignored. Ned spied glints of crossbows, steel hook bolts tipped with green vials. Wildfire tune. Protect the king, Jaime barked. The dragon ring knelt shields, forming hedgehog. Stormfire roared, sensing threat. Chains strained. A rider clad in black-scaled brigandine urged his horse nearer. He removed helm, Corin Uller, scar-traced face like cracked pottery. He brandished scroll strips. Blood for blood, he cried. Martell healers burn. Martell vengeance flames. Ned shouted back. The prince offers gold and grain. Gold quenches no pyre. Uller spat. He raised hand. Crossbows aimed at Stormfire. Time cracked. Ned saw Robert tense, leg shaky. If bolts struck with wildfire, the dragon's platform would ignite. No chain could hold Inferno. Stormfire surged. Sensing malice. Hook, bolts, drawn. Robert rose in stirrups, thunder in voice. Stand down! I give oath. Stormfire will spit no flame on Dorne. Uller's eyes burned with grief. And who gives oath for those already ash? The crossbows twanged. Bolts streaked. Ned's world narrowed to green-tipped splinters. Some plunged into sand, short. Others hammered Stormfire's flank. Shattering vials. Wildfire ignited. Emerald blossoms splashing scale. The dragon shrieked. Chains rattled as she thrashed. Heat exploded. The platform's anchor pin sheared. Stormfire reared, wings billowing. Ned screamed for men to fall back. Wildfire crawled over chain links, dripping onto oxen. Beasts bawled, hooves flailing. Robert spurred forward, hammer raised, as if to shield the dragon with flesh. Barristan seized reins, hauled him aside at last heartbeat. Stormfire's wings hammered air. One chain snapped free, linked pinwheels bursting. She lurched skyward, trailing emerald flame. Crossbow volley, two loosed. But now she was aloft. Flame washed down. Wildfire droplets igniting Uller's first ranks. Screams pealed. The dragon climbed, banked, roared fury reforged by pain. She turned, nose diving. Scatter! Ned bellowed. Chaos erupted. Dornish retreating, royal guards scrambling. Stormfire opened jaws. A torrent of fire mingled with whitish smoke. Nothing like wildfire but pure furnace. It raked across crossbowmen. Sand turned to glass. Horses collapsed. Robert watched, half in horror, half elation. The sun coronet tumbled from saddle. A second jag of lightning cracked from cloudless sky, striking the dragon's left wing. Perhaps mere coincidence, perhaps desert gods mocking. Stormfire screamed, but fury outweighed pain. She pivoted midair, unleashing storm of flame on right flank of attackers. The Ullers broke, scattering. Yet wildfire still burned on her scales, crawling toward neck. The resin salve glowed, but could it hold? Ned saw green tongues lick chain base. He spurred forward, shouting for water barrels. Men raced to topple vats. Water splashed, hissing. Meanwhile, Stormfire circled again. This time, she faced royal lines, eyes wide, pupils slitted. Friend or foe blurred behind pain and fire. Ned's blood iced. She might strike indiscriminately now. Jaime galloped to Robert's side. Withdraw, back to basin. Regroup. Robert leaned heavy on saddle pommel. He gazed at Dragon aloft, face torn. I cannot leave her. Then she'll leave you ashes, Jaime snapped. Ride. They retreated by ranks, shields overhead. Dornish survivors fled opposite direction. The plain scattered like grains before scythe. Stormfire circled 3 times, breathing sporadic gouts. More smoke than flame, as if reserves spent. Finally she turned east to open sky, ascending beyond Bolt's range, black shape dwindling. Dust settled. The field lay studded with charred corpses, puddles of molten glass, smoldering ox carcasses. The dragon platform burned, wheels melted. Oxen driver, team's ashes. No one cheered. Robert dismounted only when safe on a rocky rise. Doran's messenger arrived, ashen, apologizing, cursing rogue houses. Robert listened, silent as stone. When messenger finished, the king spoke soft. "Tell your prince peace lies in those ashes. When the realm burns, remember who fanned flames." The envoy gaped, rode away with dread shadowing. Ned approached. Robert's face hung in twilight like carved basalt. "She will heal," Ned offered. "She will," Robert agreed. "And when she does, no chain again. Let the realm bow or break." "Vengeance begets endless war," Ned warned. Robert turned eyes wild with loss. "They tried to slay my child, Ned. I am done compromising." Ned felt chasm open between them, wider than desert. He had bound his honor to a man now wielding living apocalypse as spear of wrath. The realm trembled on brink of dragon-forged doom. Night fell black. Fires dotted plain like fallen stars. In that darkness thunderless lightning flickered. Dry storm portending nothing but cracked earth. Somewhere aloft Stormfire sailed, wounded but alive. A comet of rage seeking a sky large enough to contain vengeance. And the Northmen knew that unless hearts cooled faster than wildfire, no wall of ice, no oath of honor, no fountain of Dornish mercy would quell the storm he now marched beside. The Game of Thrones had welcomed dragons anew, and the board was already blistered by flame. Yet hope, stubborn as weeds in cracks of stone, clung still. In council tent, Ned unfurled parchment, penned letters to Winterfell, to Stannis, to Jon Arryn, if life yet clung. He wrote truths bitter as wormwood, urging unity, urging counsel beyond swords. He sealed wax with direwolf. Outside, the desert wind lifted ashes skyward, mingling them with stars. In the hush between gusts, he thought he heard wings, miles distant, tracing circles over unseen frontiers. He prayed they belonged to dawn, not doom. Dawn, though, is born in blood as often as in light. Every maester's chronicle knows, and as the sands cooled and tents glowed with fearful lantern warmth, one truth sealed itself in the Northman's marrow. The dragon had chosen her sky. Whether the king and the realm could survive beneath it remained a tale yet to be scrawled. Each line inked in fire, each pause measured in heartbeats of men who still dared stand between storm and shadow.